All right, I think we are getting started.
Makeup
There we
presenter.
see, she's doing it too, singing that song.
Always.
All right, hello everybody. Today is Thursday, September 8th. This is MS Office Hours. My name is Heather Cox, and with me today are my fabulous co-hosts.
Hey everyone, Stephanie Stevens here.
Victoria Dean.
Oh, and Garrett's on mute, but that's Garrett Chandler.
Of course.
And
Thanks,
we have
Heather.
we have our fabulous Power Platform guru, Nick Miller, here with a community sourced suggestion. So that's one of the things that we are trying to do more and more of this year is really take everything we can from those of you who give us your time and energy and give back in some different ways. So Nick, we'll turn it over to you and you can give us the whole story in the demo.
Cheers. Thanks, everybody. So let me know when you can see the screen. A thumbs up or a high five.
Yeah, it's working.
Wait, yeah, I know I'm presenting. There we go.
Okay.
So I submitted, created this Microsoft form and sent out to the crew, 6 weeks-ish ago, to get an idea as to, I can present just about anything, right? But if it's not tangible, no one's really going to remember. So, how can we make this beneficial for you? So sent out a questionnaire, got some good feedback back. One of the ones that came through was how to work with combo boxes and large lists. So I took that and built a little PowerPoint slide, and we'll go into a live demo at the end to kind of look at combo boxes and how they work inside of Canvas apps. So combo boxes, what are they? Well, it's a control, and this is straight from the Microsoft documentation. So a combo box is a control that allows you to search for items that you will select. The search is performed server side using the search field property, so the performance is not affected by large data sources. Pretty nice, right? We can search through, pull back the key information, select it, and keep moving about our day. Question is, what data sources can we use? Any array data type, right? And so here's some kind of key examples of array data types that we can pull back into Power Apps. Obviously, SharePoint lists, Dataverse tables, SQL tables, collections defined within the Canvas app, various external data sources in an array format, so JSON arrays, responses from Power Automate. From Power Automate Flow, we can pull information back as tables within our Canvas apps. Users from the Office 365 Users Connector, along with any custom connectors that we have a response where we have it built out to return a JSON table. What do they look like? So to start, combo boxes, they allow us to connect to those arrays of data, similarly to a drop-down control, but it allows us to search through the options that we have available. So here's just a little screenshot of kind of what a drop-down box looks like. If you've ever created a Power App from a SharePoint list out of the box, you click on Automate or Integrate, click on Canvas Apps, and click Create an App. It creates a standalone Power App from that data source. And if you have a person group field on that list as a column, you'll see this as a person there dynamically. So we're able to look through our people chooser to be able to choose a person to be able to select for that particular item. Combo boxes have 3 different layouts. They have a single, which is what we're seeing over here on the left, where it's just one line of data from the data source. A double line, so you can have two different pieces of data from your data source to display in the drop down itself. And then a person, so made it to where it can dynamically look up to get a user's profile information. And so we can see an image of the person, and then we can put the name, and we could also put in their email address, their department, their job title, whatever we so choose to put in there. However, how do they work, right? So combo boxes uses the search function within Canvas apps to be able to query those data sources. If anyone's worked with search in the past, they know that there's some issues with delegation. And delegation, what is that? Once again, popped in here. This is directly from the Microsoft documentation. Delegation is where the expressiveness of a Power Apps formula meets the need to minimize data moving over the network. Long list of stuff, right? So in short, Power Apps would delegate the processing of data at the data source rather than moving it into the app and processing locally. The thing is that search is only delegable in a handful of data sources, and it only works on strings. So one of the major limitations with delegation is that if your data source exceeds 500 records and a function is not delegable, then Power Apps may not be able to retrieve all the data, and you may be looking at the wrong results. The most popular delegable data sources, and these, when we share this out, we'll have these links will be active. Is the Microsoft Dataverse. SharePoint is delegable for some functions. SQL Server and Salesforce. So you're probably asking, like, can this really work? The answer is yes. It can work, but it takes a little bit of thinking outside the box to be able to get there. So, for example, if you have a combo box that queries and returns more than 500 items, right? That standard out of the box 500. That's what our Canvas app is set to make our data row limit that we can make explicit calls for is 500. Should we, look at methods to potentially narrow that data set to bring back the subset? However, we can return a max of 2,000 items when connected to that data source, assuming that there aren't any limitations on the data source itself. So for example, the Office 365 users connector, I ran into this yesterday. Did not know what the max was, but working with another customer was able to find out that max for using the search users action or the search users v2 is a max of 999 items, which with roughly 20,000 users, that's not very helpful. So if the API that you're connecting to, that data source, limits the amounts of responses that you can get back, that there's nothing we can do on the app side to change that. So we have to figure out other methods to potentially connect to that data to narrow the span so we get the correct data in our combo boxes. So one of the options that I had mentioned earlier is increasing the data row limit on the app side. So in a Canvas app, we can just go to File, Settings. On the general setting here, we're able to scroll down to data row limit and change that to 2,000. When we're dealing with combo boxes, we really don't want thousands of options in there. We want to try to narrow down the field to the most important to that particular user. So what's a realistic size for a data set? Okay, you have to ask yourself some questions, right? What's the actual size? What does large really mean? Is it 500? Is it 5,000? Is it 200? Because if it's under 2,000, we can absolutely manage that. That's not going to hinder us. We'll still get a delegation warning, but it's not going to hinder us to be able to actually show that data in our Canvas apps. But if it's more than 2,000, then we really need to think about other ways to streamline and narrow that focus of the data so that we get important information and usable information back into the Power App. Is a single combo box the correct tool, right? Should there be cascading dropdowns in the final data set displayed inside of a gallery? Those types of things that you would want to ask yourself is, if this data set is big, how can I narrow it down? And can I use a combination of different controls to be able to do that and supply the correct information to our end users? So realistic data sets, in the end, you're really building this for your end users, right? Is 500 options too many for a combo box? If the data is needed and the users can search through it and they get to they need and required quickly, then no, that's fine, long as they can get to the information. But the key is having useful, meaningful, and clean, meaning no duplicates or unused records in the data response return. So we don't want to see, if we're looking for people, I don't want to see conference rooms. I don't want to see service accounts or non-active accounts, right? So we want to make sure that that data is clean. So can you use a SharePoint list of, say, schools, right, as an option for a combo box? Say you have a customer that has over 500-600 different schools within their district. Sure, absolutely you can. Can there be more than 500 options? Yes, of course. Can you use a combo box? Yes. The thing is if we have 500, 5,000 items that we're wanting to look for. So say an employee directory or a list of, say we have a number of staff and we want to register parking passes at each facility, and we have 500 facilities and every facility has 200 to 300 employees. That number just racks up, right? Can we do that? Yes, but we have to do some creative thinking outside the box to be able to do that. So with no further ado, we're going to jump right into the live demo. So I've built this app to do a couple of different things to showcase the delegation and kind of how we can maneuver around delegation. So inside of SharePoint, I've created a SharePoint list that has roughly about 300-ish items in here. And I've connected it to a cars list to be able, just so we can create something here. That's what we're showing here on the left-hand side. I've also created a Dataverse table that has the listing of these different types of schools. There are 6 of them. And I just went through, created a whole bunch and added a number to the end. So the Dataverse table has roughly 12,000 items in there. And the SharePoint list has roughly about 300. So within this, a combo box is very straightforward. Whenever if we're connecting to a SharePoint list and we have a choice option or a people chooser, it automatically gives us either a drop down or a combo box. These were just plain text fields, and I went ahead and just added in a combo box into the data card itself. So in this particular data card, it's connected to my SharePoint list in schools. And so the different layouts that we have with it for a data card can be managed by clicking on edit over here in the field section. And so right now for this one, it says, hey, this is a single layout. I could have double or a person. And if I change that, it'll change the options that I have available here. The key to this is that I click this drop down for primary text. That's what's being shown in the combo box for the end user experience. That's what they're going to be able to read against. And so as you can see here, I have title, full path. These are all columns that are on the back end of any SharePoint list. So we see full path, name with extension, compliant asset ID, full path, on down the line. I just have title in here. But notice it says search field because the function for combo box is the search function. And if we click that drop down, 9 times out of 10, if you add this from scratch, just say, hey, I want to add in a control here and it's a combo box and it's connected to a SharePoint list, it's always going to be the first one, compliant asset ID, and guaranteed it'll probably be blank. But the search field, it says, okay, which column across SharePoint do I want to be able to search? And for this one, it's going to be title. But as you can see, there's a nice little triangle here for this particular one. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and click that. And when I click into my stethoscope over here, there are some warnings here, delegation warning. So I'm just going to click on this and let me there we go. Roll that back down. So basically it's telling me I have a delegation warning. The search part of this formula may not work correctly on large data sets. Okay, so that's telling me that, hey, if you got more than what your data row limit is, 500 by default, then this may not work correctly. You may not be able to get everything that you need. Thing is that that's okay. If we have 300, 400, 500 items, even if we have 1,000, we can come over here to File, click on Settings, and in the General tab, if we just scroll down a little bit, we see our data row limit of 500. Okay, even if we change that, like I know there's only 300 and some change in that SharePoint list, but because search is not a delegable function for SharePoint, it's always going to throw that warning. And it is a warning, but it will work. And so just to get an idea what it is here, I'm gonna go ahead and new car registration, refresh my form here. So I have, basically a list of different cars based on the list. It just gets a distinct value from what's already been submitted. And if something isn't there, I can type it in. I'm going to keep BMW. But here on the SharePoint side, when I click on this drop down, notice I have it, organized, sorted by school. But as I scroll down through, there's a number at the end of each one. So I have distinct information here. what the search allows me to do, so if I start typing tail, right, it's going to search through and show me all items that contain tail. And then if I pop in here and say, hey, you know what, I want to look for number 12. Here, all in the district of 12, okay? So search allows us, is a contains operator, and that's why it only works with strings, is so that we can look anywhere within that string that matches what we're looking to do. If SharePoint, and so I'm going to go ahead and remove that and close down. If I decided I did not want to use that, I could use filter. Okay, I could use filter to say, hey, I want to filter this. Filter is a delegable function to SharePoint, but the only thing we can really use to be able to search a string is the starts with operator, which means that it's only looking from the left. So if I type in 12, if I were using a filter, it would not show up. I would have 0 items here. It only looks from the left. So I'd have to know what the name of the school is, not necessarily the district number. So there are ways around it, but there's limitations with filters. And one of the links, and in the links in the slide deck, are these here. I use this all the time. I'm an expert in the Power Platform, and I always go to Bing, Google, whatever your favorite search engine is, and Google Power Apps filter. It always brings me here to this. I go to this all the time, mainly because it talks about delegation, and I'm able to go into the delegable data sources because this updates. It could, Salesforce wasn't there a year and a half ago. It was not a delegable data source that they would populate here in this documentation. So this updates, so I constantly go back to it. So I have SharePoint pulled up over here. And as you can see, let me zoom in a little bit. Search is not one of those functions. Search is not one of those functions. Let me just a little bit. There we go. And so where's it at? Where did they go? There they are. Search is not one, but filter is, and the operator is as well. One of the key things also, the SharePoint list ID, not delegable unless it uses an equal sign, which I think was outrageous. I would love to be able to sort by ID. It's automatically indexed, but it does not allow us to say, hey, give me an ID greater than 30, right? It doesn't allow us to do that. So some of those limitations. And so the other side of the house, we're looking at Dataverse, which has a lot more delegable functions. And in fact, as you can see, search is not listed here, but search is absolutely delegable. And that's the other drop down, the combo box that I have there in that example. And then of course, SQL Server is actually probably the most delegable across all of the connections that we have, using filter, search, lookup, being able to use different operations within it to be able to query and get information. So it was one of the first that was the most delegable using these functions. So back over here to our app, what I have it doing here, if I just type in, I'm going to type in like 300 and see if anything's there. Nope, nothing's there. I didn't do that. Let me see. 150. No, let's do this. Do lit. And then as we scroll down, I can never remember how far the variances went. Oh, they went to 50, right? So if I click on lit 49 and click save, it's going to go ahead and add that item over here for lit 49 right here. And so for the next one that I'm going to do, I'm going to pick Toyota over here, is I'm going to look at my Dataverse dropdown. And so Dataverse, we can see that there's a lot more stuff here. There's a lot more stuff here. Okay, and everything may not be populated if you start scrolling. Like there's only about 100-ish in there. But I know that if I type in let's go 1532. If I do that, that's going to bring up that district, right? 1532. So I have the same 6 schools, 2,000 of those same 6 schools. So I have a little over 12. I have 12,000 items in this particular list. And I know for sure these were not created at the top. No way. They absolutely were not. And just in case I was curious, I can also go to number 2 and we're able to kind of see that information as well. Anything that's got 2, and it's using the search property to be able to get to that information. So with that, being said, so we're gonna do 1999. Do a quick search for that one. Notice the little ants running across the top there. It's going through and making the data query to go get that information, and there they are. Those are the like item number, 11,000, 11,950, 970, who knows? And I'll choose Pine View and click save. And there's our Dataverse item. So let me pop that form back up here and just take a look at the, and as you can see, there's nothing very special on the items. It's just the data source. I had DV for the name, so I could tell the difference between the schools. So Dataverse schools versus SharePoint schools. And that's how we can use combo boxes to actually connect to those large lists and still be able to use them efficiently within our Canvas apps. So with that, any questions? Feel free to come off mute. Use the raise your hand feature.
I think you've stunned them into silence. I mean, you're like really smart, Nick.
Like super smart.
I have a dumb question.
There's
I know you showed us all this cool stuff, but I'm going to ask something very simple. You see that environment that you see at the top in the Power Apps? Do we need to change that, like, as people develop? I sort of like, I'm just learning about Power Apps and I don't really know what that construct is, but like, do we need to create different environments for people when they are creating apps in Power Apps, or can we just leave it at default, especially when we're beginning?
So here's the key. All right, is that when we're talking about device environment management and governance, that sort of thing, is that the default environment, if they have Office, Power Apps for Office 365 turned on in their A3 or A5 license, they'll be able to create Power Apps in the default environment. That's where they should start to play, right? The thing is, we limit using data loss prevention policies as to what connectors are available for them to use in that default environment to limit their abilities to do things. One example is, oh, hey, I got this email. Oh, it came from like corporate communications and it says internal, right? Oh, I'm gonna take that, I'm gonna make it a PDF, and then I'm gonna post it out to Twitter, right? Something that we don't want to be able to do. So we limit the connectors availability of being able to use that with business versus non-business, or we can even block the connector entirely if it is blockable. One of the other things that you can do is that with each A3 or A5 license that your users have, they can create what's called a developer plan environment. And what that is it builds them a sandbox that they can use that has access to premium connectors and Dataverse for them to be able to build in that they have access to. They can share their apps with some other people, but it's not made for production use. So that's two methods of being able to do that. Another one is that as an organization, you can, lay out the governance saying, hey, you know what, if you want to use these connectors in the default environment, that's awesome. But if you want to be able to connect to, say, on-premises data, or if you wanted to connect to Salesforce, or if you wanted to connect to ServiceNow, something along those lines, we have a dedicated development environment for those users for them to be able, and we grant them access to that. And it would show up in the environments here. And they just click on that, and that's where they're able to build their Power Apps and test them out that in a safe place that isn't shared with everybody. You have to be granted access to that. It really kind of depends on the type of data that you're having, but for testing and clicking and playing, creating things connected to SharePoint, the default environment that's what it's there for. It's made for personal productivity. And once it gets beyond personal productivity, that's when we look at moving it into other environments for, a larger production rollout, or, hey, this crosses departments, or, hey, what we're building at, this high school could really be used across the 10 other schools in the district. So we're going to package that up and we're going to move that into another environment where we have a production life cycle so that we can scale it out and say, hey, guess what? Everybody can use this, and the data is maintained more stringently than if someone was just building it out of SharePoint. We would, change that over to Dataverse. We would look at on-prem solutions if we wanted to, depending, and it all really does base down to your licensing that you have.
That's awesome. And I wanna call out Christine's comment about a really well-prepared demo. Nick, like it is clear how much effort you put into creating this demo and putting this all together. So I really want to thank you for doing that, for taking what somebody suggested and really putting that into this, because that's incredible. And I'm sure that we'll see lots of people watching the recording. So Nick, thank you for everything. Thank you
Cheers.
to the folks that showed up today. We appreciate you so much as always. We cannot wait to see you again next week. And in the meantime, everybody go celebrate my birthday this weekend.
Hooray! If anybody wants to join us, I'm picking Heather up very early on Sunday morning for the earliest birthday breakfast ever.
You got to get into